Hello, everyone who's watching.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Danilo Campos. I help with, I'm technical director over for the social impact folks here at GitHub.
Hi, I'm Jessie Toth. I'm the head of web technology here at GitHub. Work on a bunch of back-end things behind github.com.
I am Fabian Perez. I'm a product designer. I lead design on our core product.
And Francesca is here, but her microphone is not working, so she is typing in chat right now, if everybody can see that. Francesca, do you know if everybody can see the chat that is watching, or is that just us? I'm not sure. Okay, hopefully everyone that's watching can see Francesca chatting, but if not, she's the senior consultant for innovation and entrepreneurship for SHPE, and she says we have a lot of great content for this group tonight.
So I guess I'll go first. I first learned about GitHub in 2009. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder, literally, and said, "We're going to start using version control right now, and we're going to use GitHub." And I had no idea what any of those things meant. But I went to GitHub.com, and it looked super cool. And then I found Octocats, and I thought that was really cool. So I fell in love after that, and I've just been kind of a big fanboy of GitHub since '09.
I think I learned about GitHub around the same time, '09 or '10. I was in college at the time and doing a project for a software engineering course. And we had to collaborate on a team and build something new, and so we did our work on GitHub, and it was the first time working with pull requests and all that. Once I graduated, I went and worked at other companies. I never thought that I would work at GitHub until a couple of years ago. I met a few engineers who worked here and thought the problems were really interesting, so I tried as much as possible to get in here, and it turns out that they thought I would be all right as an engineer, so they hired me, and I've been here for the last 2.5 years.
So I've been working in startups for the last 5 years, and I got tired of having a boss, and I got tired of going to an office all the time, and I wasn't going to do that anymore ever. But my boss, Nicole Sanchez, recently joined GitHub as their VP of Social Impact, which is a department that does many cool things, and one of the things is something called Connect Home. And Connect Home is a national initiative to bring broadband to public housing. And so Nicole's telling me all about Connect Home and all the things that I could do to help Connect Home, and I just had to say yes. And so I actually joined just 2 months ago, so I'm very fresh to the team. Hey, thanks.
Oh, thank you. We're very excited to be here.
Thank you.
So this is a fun one. GitHub definitely has a lot of things that it has to work on around scalability. That's one of our biggest challenges right now and continues to be our biggest challenge. So the question is, for me, I work, among other things, on scalability. Tell me about a challenge you've had to work through at GitHub as it relates to serving more and more users in a global setting. So one of the biggest projects that I worked on here that it went on for a year before I started working on it, and it stretched for a year as I was working on it, was that we did a rewrite of the entire permission system underneath GitHub.com. So the system that controls access to repositories, to teams, to organizations, things like that. It was a huge change. It touched almost every line of code in the code base. It was an extremely long project that required a lot of migration, a lot of careful consideration, since security and privacy and access to code is really important to people, and we couldn't possibly get it wrong. So it involved building a lot of tools to make sure that what we were doing was absolutely right. But we were able to do that, and in fact, some of the changes that have been built on top of that, the new organizations that we just rolled out, just shipped recently. So it's exciting to see things being built on top of some of the scalability work that I've done. So the question is, so as you were growing, you were also revamping software. How did you manage to keep the platform running? Sounds like an intense QA nightmare. It was a big challenge. We had to build a lot of tools to be able to run both the old system and a new system at the same time, which I had never done before, but it was a fantastic challenge. And now that I've done it and that we have these tools, like, I don't ever want to build software another way again. Like, I always want to have these tools so that I can have confidence and know that the new thing that I'm building is going to work just as well or better than the old thing. Next question is, were you excited to be given the chance to do something you had no experience doing before? Yeah, absolutely. Excited, scared. Definitely, it was a challenge. It was a huge challenge. But looking back on it, seeing the things that I got to learn out of that and the growth that I experienced because of that, like, I'm very thankful for the opportunity. Like, it was amazing. So being at GitHub, like, coming into that project, because that was one of the first projects that I worked on when I got to GitHub, definitely right time, right place for my career. Definitely taught me some amazing engineering techniques that I continue to use this day and that I will continue to use into the future. Absolutely.
Hello. So the question is, you work on design. Explain a little bit about what design means. At GitHub, it means a lot of things, but product design at GitHub, we focus on making the product as human as possible. The tech behind GitHub is super complex. Version control is really complex. Lots of people who come in through the door, brand new users, have no idea how to use Git. And so the biggest challenge that we have is making that stuff relatable, making it easy to understand and easy to use. And so design here is really all about making that stuff really transparent. It's about helping people be successful in their work. So many people use GitHub for their work, their careers. So good design here means that we're helping people be better than they were yesterday. Yeah, so the question is product design then an exclusive front-end job, or are you involved in back-end design as well? Yeah, we have a really special team here. The product designers here are designers and developers. So often we are able to tinker around and sort of build prototypes and often production-ready code. And our stuff, one of the big things that we tell people when we're interested in getting them to come work here is that you can have an impact on day one, and that your code can make it out to production just like everybody else, and that designers here, we have all this freedom to build stuff and to get it out into the world, and so I think that's super powerful right now on our team. Definitely. Yeah, I love this question. Earlier in GitHub's history, all of our users, sorry, the question is, how different is it, or is it different at all, to develop for technical slash software slash geeks than it is to develop for normal users? And yeah, in the early history of GitHub for a long time, our core audience was really technical developers. They were already building apps. They had a lot of software that they were already working on. And so in a lot of ways, we had it easy in the beginning because everyone here was a developer, and we understood what other developers needed and what they would like to use. But as we grew, and as we've been growing, and we focused for the future, we're thinking about the next generation of developers. We're thinking about young kids right now who are learning to code in school and what it's going to be like for them to come onto GitHub. And like I said before, a lot of the people who come and sign up on GitHub today, they don't know Git, and Git and version control is such a huge part of a software developer or designer's career. Especially in professional settings, it'd be very difficult to find a major company right now that doesn't rely on version control. It's just that important, and so it's definitely a lot more difficult today to design GitHub to be really sort of easy to understand and to help people be more successful in using Git and version control. But that's the fun challenge, especially as we roll into other markets that are sort of in a sense emerging, rural places in Africa, or even some of the places here in the States where we're doing Connect Home and putting broadband into public housing. Those are amazing opportunities to get people onto the product, and we have a huge challenge in getting them to understand this stuff.
So what's social impact at GitHub? Fun question. We have a few mandates. First of all, internally, we are dedicated to building a company that is accessible and equitable to all of its employees. And so what that means is diversity and inclusion as a discipline, as a subject for training, as education. We want everyone to understand that different folks come to work with very different needs in order to be successful. And we want to build an organization that has all of those needs taken into account. And so social impact's job, in part, is to make sure that those things are built into our processes and how we deal with recruiting, human resources, benefits, perks, all of that stuff touches the basics that people need to feel good and safe and included in the workplace. Our goal is to have it so that anyone can walk into work and not feel like they have to check any part of their identities at the door. So that's really important to us. But our mandate extends also outside of the organization, because GitHub is a social tool. It's a platform for collaboration. It's a place for people to come together and cooperate and share work and build up something that they could not have done on their own. And so social impact's job is to identify all of the places where GitHub is not succeeding in helping people do their social collaboration in building software, and find opportunities to get us into that mix, extend the places where GitHub can be helpful, and ultimately make more and more people be able to have access to the fruits of the really powerful magic of automation that can only come through software. It's about GitHub's, the external-facing part is about GitHub and using its platform, definitely, but also about making sure that we identify all of the places where GitHub's mission makes sense, where we aren't participating. So Francesca tells us, when it comes to open source, she was having a great conversation with a good friend, founder of Sabio. I've heard of them. A full stack development boot camp. And that's all we've gotten so far. But shouts to Sabio, cool org. We're still wondering how that movement, if we can call it that, is going to benefit new developers / startups who come from traditionally underrepresented communities. Fuck yeah, I love that. Let's talk about that. So, my career exists because of open source, and it exists because of a particular flavor of open source, which is actually kind of like out in the weeds and from an era before there was even GitHub. But when I began building software, I began in a little 3D online community called Second Life. Which was all the rage about 10 years ago. It was really exciting because you could go into Second Life and you could build like 3D creations, and then you could write code for those 3D creations. And because it was social, then you could share them with other people, and they could participate in your fun, and they could buy crap from you. And I was actually selling robots on Second Life, and I made enough money to actually pay my real-life rent a couple of months. It was a very exciting moment. And all of that was possible because I learned to code using people's existing open-sourced samples of code. That gave me the leg up to get started because somebody gave me a little scaffolding of like, all right, this does like 60% of what you want to do, and this other thing does like 20% of what you want to do, and if you cobble those things together and write a little bit of glue, you get to like good enough. And I never could have gotten there without people sharing code that they had already used to solve their problems. So there's a huge benefit to folks who are traditionally outsiders learning to code when people are willing to share that code. Now, culturally, there's plenty of work to be done, and I would be the first to say so. However, from a conceptual perspective, my thing is sharing code lets you get to where you want to go faster, and if you're already coming up from behind, it's a really nice booster pack to have.
So the next question is, how does GitHub help protect those pieces of code that they want to keep proprietary? We do that with some of the code that I wrote. It definitely controls access to that. We do it by, we also have an enterprise product that some people can, like companies can take a version of GitHub and install it on their servers behind their firewall so that it's not even available on the public internet because, because of compliance requirements or paranoia or whatever, some companies, like, they still want to use GitHub, but they really can't let anybody see their code or have their code or have that even be a possibility, and so they can't have it live on our servers or out on the web itself.
I'm really interested. The question is focusing on our careers going forward. What are we learning now, and how? Lately, I've been really interested in design tools, in building sort of the next generation of tools for the next generation designer. Things have changed a lot since I started designing for the web and mobile, and the tools that we have today don't really reflect that very well. So I've been spending some time sort of rethinking, even here at GitHub, how we do design review. And I've been working on a few apps, and I've gotten really interested in native applications lately, mostly Mac apps. And so how I've learned that, or have learned that, a lot of it is trial and error. It's brute force. It's trying a bunch of stuff that seems like it makes sense, and then when I realize that my code will never compile, I will read through error messages. I'll Google a lot. I'll look at documentation, but a lot of it is just sort of slogging through and sort of looking at other pieces of examples that might be open source on GitHub. There's a lot of really great example apps that you can find for all kinds of projects, all kinds of languages on GitHub. So that stuff is really helpful. Yeah.
Sure, I'll answer this. One of the big things I'm learning, like I just keep harping on the scalability thing because that's where GitHub is right now. But I'm learning lots of patterns for scalability, like how to build things like circuit breakers into code so that when things do fail, because things will always fail, something always goes wrong, like software never works. And so if you build it and you expect it never to break, it's always going to break and it's going to be terrible. So I'm learning the ways to build it and expect that it will break and have it fail gracefully, have it like, not all of GitHub.com goes down. Maybe just, your notifications don't work, or maybe just this little piece doesn't work, but everything else is okay, and like the world is not on fire. And learning those things is fantastic. I get to work with people who have done it before in other places, so I get to learn from them. Open source definitely is a huge way to learn this. Like looking at, there are other companies that have come before us that have had to do a similar thing, and they've done all the work and they've open sourced their software. We can look at the patterns that they use and the tools that they've built to do that and see if that works for us, or if we have to build something similar. At least we can see how somebody else has done it and learn from their mistakes.
I guess for me, I've been writing software for the last 10 years, and it was always very cozy to me because I never had to deal with like more than 2-3 people in the process of building stuff, and oftentimes I could just throw on headphones and not deal with anybody all damn afternoon as I got things done. And I enjoyed that because it was easy. And what I'm learning to deal with now is people, and people are very hard because they don't conform to like rules, and there's not like like a compiler that's going to give you a warning before you do something that doesn't work for people, and so that's very different. I'm lucky to work on a team that is filled with people who have a lot of experience with people, with organizing people, organizing their efforts. All the rest of it. So I love computers a lot, and I love the opportunities that come from understanding computers. And because that's true, I'm willing to tolerate the incredible pain of figuring out people. We do too. This is the biggest tech company I've worked for. So for me, when I look at the difference between GitHub and previous endeavors, we've got 300 plus people kicking around here doing stuff, and most of the companies where I've worked, we topped out at a dozen. And there's a huge difference in working with a dozen people versus working with a few hundred. Communication overhead is higher. Bureaucracy is more complete, which means that it takes longer to sort out your offer, to get through the interview, all the rest of it. And then once you land, figuring out how to get things done inside of a large organization is a whole lot more work than it would be when you just shout at the person a table over from you, or something like that. Now, aside, when you go to a bigger org like GitHub, and we're not that big. Like Twitter is 4,000 people, Apple is tens of thousands of people. So we're in a sweet spot there. But compared to the tiny startups, GitHub is a lot more grown up, and as a result, you get a lot of better grown up stuff. Like there's much more generous benefits and healthcare and all the rest of that stuff at GitHub than you would mostly find in earlier startups.
So yeah, if most of the people watching this conversation are looking at really big companies, 300 is pretty small for sure. And I've worked for some larger companies, and it's definitely, even though 300 is large for this, and 300 is like almost 3 times as many people as were here when I started, but compared to the larger company, I feel like I have a voice within this company. in a really large company, you are definitely a little piece in a very big machine, and sometimes it's hard to see how you affect the whole picture, or where you can even go, or what your career path is. You might have to like climb a management ladder or do something like that. But here I feel like I get to have a real impact on the company. I can walk up to the CEO and have a conversation with him if I want to. We're still small enough for that. So that's awesome. I mean, not as small as a 12-person startup where I'm sitting next to the CEO every day and like can like reach over and punch him, but it's still accessible. It's definitely, it's good.
And it's also worth stressing that like those tiny startups have no shortage of, frankly, fuckery to them, because they're so, still growing that they don't have processes in place. They don't have seasoned people managers in a lot of spots. So the spectrum of sizes for companies has a lot of impact on your day-to-day kind of personal experience.
The biggest thing I'll say is I have actual work-life balance, and that's sort of everyone likes to talk about that, but we, at every other tiny, I've only worked at startups, and at all of them, it's always a struggle, like, are we going to be around tomorrow? Do we have money to pay people and that kind of thing? And it's a really stressful thing, and when you feel like you have to stay up all day and all night to just try to get something out the door, to get somebody to give you some more money, it's not a great way to live. It's something that I did a few times when I was younger, didn't know better, but I wouldn't trade those experiences in for anything. They were great, but I see now that work-life balance is actually really important, and I get that at GitHub. I get pushed really hard. I work on some really hard problems, but I also get to go home whenever I want to, and there's no expectation that I need to be around all night or that I need to come in on weekends or anything like that. So I feel like I have this space here to work on really challenging stuff without having to feel like I need to sort of go without sleep very often or ever.
Francesca says you guys get massages on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and an on-site gym, and 3 kitchens, and sunbathing comfy chairs on the roof overlooking the San Francisco Bay. We do. Those are all benefits we get, and like that's pretty nice compared to a tiny little startup where you're not going to get that. You'll probably barely get paid. So the next question is, how is negotiating a job offer different from a traditional job?
Can you expand on what you mean by traditional?
She means those without sunbathing roofs, apparently. There are plenty of companies with those, I think. I can start off with this, at least for me. In every other company I've negotiated with or tried to get a job with, it felt like they were trying to get me for as cheap as possible. Whereas with GitHub, I negotiated a bit. I gave a bit of a range for my salary, and they gave me above what I asked for. So it felt like from the very beginning, at least for me, that GitHub was trying to take care of me and was looking out for me and wanted to bring me in and not like nickel and dime me and make me feel like I had to beg for every penny. Oh, that was not the question at all. So the question was actually, how would someone go about negotiating a job offer at a startup GitHub versus a more established large corporation? Okay, yeah, just keep negotiating at the large corporations. They'll start low, you start high, you'll meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, for me, I had been freelancing, and when you do software and you freelance and you have like enough of a body of work that you can prove to people reasonably that you're not a bozo, you can make like a ridiculous amount of money, and not in a way where you're like Scrooge McDuck diving through coins, but like you can do a thing where you only work 3 or 6 months out of a given year if that's what you really want to do and you're decent at the sales process. So when I came in, I showed up, I was like, all right, this is the number. It's got to be this number. I've researched the market. This is what is paid for this tier of like my experience. And, please do not fuck me around. And, the the number came back was a little bit low, and I was like, oh, no, fix it, and they fixed it, and it was fine. So, you know, in this is a case where the company has, you know, it is known, this is public knowledge, there has been several $100 million of investment, there's cash in the bank. So at the point where you can establish that the market values you at a certain level, it's just a matter of saying, look, I'm showing up, you show up, bring the cash.
I think that's a really important point, is understanding your value where you are. Just like, I don't mean personal value, but sort of like what the market thinks you should be paid. And I think it's really important to know that stuff. Like, don't come to Silicon Valley thinking that you should get paid a little bit. It's a crazy market, and people are desperate for engineers and designers and all kinds of people, and they will pay money for it if you ask.
And that's maybe one of the most important things that we can stress for folks who are watching tonight. You need to understand that the reason that when you are offered a software job, they offer you a 6-figure income because folks believe that they can make 8 figures of value off of the work that you're doing. And the reason that's true is that software is automation. Software is the most scalable means of automating work that we have ever had in human history. And all of the money is flowing into Silicon Valley right now because there has never been a way to leverage so little work for so much impact in the history of the world. And so when you show up, you should have a very clear idea of the fact that you are leveraging power. And that power has enormous value to companies. They should treat you right. They should compensate you well. And if they aren't doing those things, then you can truck on somewhere else because you've got the power of creation in your hand, and don't fuck with somebody who is not interested in valuing you for that.
We still can't hear you. All right, time for some questions from the crowd.
Oh, what's the hashtag?
Hashtag code. Well. All right, so if you have any questions, please tweet them using hashtag code, hashtag tech, hashtag SHPE 2015, and we'll answer them.
I went to college in Boston. The question is, what is your favorite class in college and why? And the follow-up is, well, did you go to college? Yes, I went to college. I was the first kid in my entire family to go to college of any generation. And that was what it was supposed to be like my entire time growing up. And my family was like, yeah, you're the chosen one. You're going to college. And it was great. I definitely dropped out. I didn't finish. I dropped out for tech. But while I was there, my favorite class was media criticism. It was taught by this really, really tough professor, but his whole thing was really about getting us to understand, like, reading beyond things, right? Like when we read an article, or we open up the New York Times, to really think about the context that stuff is written in, who it's written by, to really like dive deeper and not just sort of like take this article and say like, oh, cool, that must be truth. Like, let me move on with my life. And so back then, as a young kid, like I realized like I wasn't doing that enough, and that's a huge thing that I'm really happy with today. Like it's very difficult for me to take anything at face value. Sort of have to dive deeper and really understand what's going on there. And I think that helps a lot in my design work because so much of design is asking why and diving deeper. When we sit down with people to do user research, for example, we never take somebody's first answer as truth, or we never take somebody's like stated problem as the real problem. We always want to dive deeper and sort of see what else is going on in that person's life, like what's sort of the environment and context they're using the software in, and stuff like that. So I think it's just that's the one class that just helped me more than anything.
I'll go next. I did go to college. I went to UC Berkeley. Both of my parents tried to go to college and dropped out, so I was the first one in my family to actually complete college. And I got a computer science degree. My favorite class was probably, on the computer science side, was compiler's class. I didn't think I was going to like it at all. I just showed up to the first lecture because I needed some space in my schedule. And it turned out I loved it. It was my favorite class I ever took. It was really interesting. It was deeply technical. It was challenging. The professor was the hardest professor I'd ever had. But I really enjoyed being pushed that way and challenged to learn things that I really liked.
I studied film of all damn things, and my favorite class was screenwriting because I got to write a screenplay, and I didn't actually pay attention in class because I don't know. But I wrote the screenplay, and that was really fun, and I got I was the only one who got top marks for that screenplay despite not paying any attention in class. And so I feel like I got away with something, and that's why it's my favorite.
I studied film too, for the record.
It's good. Film has fun application in software because it teaches you all of this like visual storytelling parameters, which are helpful to have.
Definitely.
Yeah, there are definitely all kinds of backgrounds in tech, and lots of people study other things and end up just learning how to code and coming in. That's really common.
Yeah, it's funny because there's no shortage of like work to be done that is really like arcane up there complex software work, but I think there's a lot more software work that's really just like plumbing, and so if you can understand how to link systems together, like that's what you're up to.
Yeah, for sure.
And Francesca wants us to relate to you that computer programming has so much more to do with critical thinking, and there's a lot of artists in this space, and that's a really important point. Like, there's so much more yet to be done with the computer, and we don't even know at this point what those exciting things are going to be. Everything that we think of as traditionally computer-related stuff is going to look really, really narrow and boring compared to all of the things that are going to happen over the next 20 years as more and more people can participate in building software and creating with technology, and then using the scale of networks and free scalability from automation to reach more and more audiences. The best is yet to come.
An audience question: have any of you been through a startup incubator? If so, which ones do you recommend? I personally have not been through an incubator.
Nor I.
Me either.
I have been. I worked at an early stage Y Combinator startup called Hitmonk, and that's all I got. not all computer folks are entrepreneurs, and what is important to point out, though, is that you don't have to be an entrepreneur to make a shit ton of money of just shit ton of money from software. Because of the way it scales, because of the markets that exist from software, you don't have to go through a process of building a startup to still make decent cash doing what you want to do. There are places to sell software on the internet. There are, app stores. There are things like Theme Forest where you can sell WordPress themes. There are so many ways to build a personal recurring revenue stream without going through the goofy startup route. If you want to exist in a place that is not just going to the office every day. This is an incredibly flexible career, and it's really just up to you to figure out how you want to pull money out of it and what kind of experiments you want to run to make that happen. I also wouldn't be me if I didn't point out that if you're coming from an underrepresented background, there's a lot of fuckery around venture capital, which is the typical route to building software and to a big business. But GitHub, I think, is actually a really instructive example of how you can skip the venture capital route if you build a product that has a built-in underserved need. GitHub showed up to help people make software together, and there wasn't a great tool to do that at the point where it came into existence. And so GitHub was able to bootstrap itself up to a really impressive early profitability, and as a result of that, it was able to hand out really generous benefits, and there were no venture capitalists saying, oh, no, don't do that. Mistreat your employees so that I can enjoy better returns, please. There were none of those conversations as the company got moving. Now, we took money later on, but at that point, there was already too much mojo for the VCs to feel like they had any room to fuck around. And Francesca amplifies, saying that if you actually want to build a software startup, there are ways to scale without venture capital. If there's a market that's hungry for the product, you can reinvest earnings and sustain growth organically. And it's hard to do that, but you get to own your destiny if you do it that way. And you get to decide how people share in the wealth and fruits of the business. You get a lot more control when you don't have money men screwing around inside of your company.
Question, career-wise, are you thinking of your own thing, or are you GitHubbers for life? This is interesting for me. I do happen to be one of the more entrepreneurial-minded designers here. I love GitHub. I think that it's interesting. Every other job I've had before this, I was there for 2 years and I quit. Designers get bored, it turns out. But then I came here, and I'm 2 years and some change into GitHub, and I'm feeling like I'm just getting started. I think about things. Somebody the other day was talking to me about this, and they sort of related this like, the iPhone took a really long time to develop, right? It wasn't made in 2 years. And if you really want to have a huge impact, like you could have at GitHub, it's going to be a long road, and there's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff that happen over the next 5 years, maybe even 10 or 50 at GitHub. And that's really exciting. But there's also part of me that wants to explore my own thing. I think that's because I like the challenge. I'd like to see what it's like. I want to know what it feels like to sort of build something up and potentially have a product that's loved by millions of people too. So someday in the future, hopefully I'll build my own thing. But right now, and for the foreseeable future, GitHub is a really awesome place to be.
I'll go next. I think when I go to most companies, especially before GitHub, I did the same thing as Fabian, like stay for a couple years and leave. This is the first place that I've been for a while. I think when I first started, I was definitely giddy about it, and I was like, oh my god, I'm never going to have another job again. I'll stay at GitHub forever. I think that shine has worn off a little bit. I think that's kind of a naive view. I think that it depends on where GitHub goes and where I decide I want to go in my career. GitHub has given me a lot of opportunities. I'm getting to grow. But I'm realistic about the fact that at some point you might get to a place where you want to grow and there's not a place for you to go in the company, or there's somebody who's there already because they're the ones that taught you, and now it's your turn to go somewhere else and take those lessons and try it for yourself. So there's a possibility that I will go off and do my own thing. Definitely being at GitHub has helped me to see a way to do your own thing well. Before being at GitHub, I saw the typical VC startups, and I didn't want to be involved in that culture at all. I never thought that I would start my own company. Seeing the way GitHub has done it has inspired me that it can be done better, and so if I wanted to do it, I think I could do it and do it well. So it's definitely a possibility for me in the future.
I actually just gave my notice, so no, I just got here, so I'm feeling pretty good. I don't think anything is for life, especially in software, because things move so fast and everything is dying and being reinvented and being slaughtered by some new technology that nobody expected to completely undermine somebody's business model. So everything's always changing, and I think that it's important to have that realistic view as you go into a software career. That said, for me, I came here very deliberately. I believe that GitHub is the eye of the pyramid as far as the power of software goes. It is central to how people build an enormously important industry, and it has a lot of credibility because of how successful it is in that. So I take those things very seriously. So for the first time in my life, I'm working for somebody who is at the absolute top of their game. Like Nicole Sanchez is the fucking Michael Jackson of her field, and so my thing is to hitch myself to her wagon for as long as she will tolerate my obnoxious ass, and hope to be contributing to some really important work to make tech more diverse, to make our organization as inclusive as possible, and to bring the promise of technology and the incredible career options that this has to more people who would otherwise have been shut out. I can't imagine a more exciting mission for a very long time, and so we'll see how long it takes for me to burn out and want to go sit on a beach for a while.
There was an earlier question. Am I from the Boston area? I'm not. I went to school there, and I lived there for 6 years, but I grew up in Connecticut.
If we continue to do our job right, the role that GitHub is going to play for people who want to enter the tech industry is GitHub is going to be the platform where work gets done. I'm here in part because I'm such a big believer in the power of the product to advance individuals' abilities as software developers. If your organization has a solid culture of review, which is facilitated very, very well by GitHub's pull request tools, If you do that, if you participate in an organization that does that, you will become a better software developer. You will be shown line by line the places where you suck. You'll be shown the places where you might want to do things a little bit differently. You will have someone pointing out to you the place where you did not consider something that would have an impact elsewhere in the code base. And all of that is going to help you advance so much faster than the typical way that software companies used to run, which was that you checked in your crappy code and you found out 3 weeks later that it was creating bugs that you never would have considered in parts of the code base that you don't normally touch. So there's a huge opportunity for people to become better technologists using these tools, and I'm very, very, very passionate about making sure that people understand that and get the most out of it, because I know if I'd had it earlier in my career, I would be, you know, whatever 10x developer fantasy that venture capitalists have.
Yeah, I don't think I could say it any better. I think the opportunity we have right now is we've seen that the product works, right? We make money, people love us, it's great. Software developers are getting better as a result of using our products, but this opportunity we have to get so many more people onto this product, and so many more people adopting the way that we build software and the way that we do code is going to be transformative. And I think, you know, Mark Andreessen said it. This is sort of an overused, famous quote now. Software is eating the world, and everything. You know, our CEO Chris loves to reference John Deere. He's got a thing with John Deere, and he talks about how John Deere sees itself as an analytics company, that they're a software company, that John Deere builds tractors, right? But they see that the future for them is in software. And so everyone is moving that way, and I think that the more people that we can get on the platform, and the more people that we can get building software, it's going to be great. I think like it's got huge potential for people. I think when we teach them how to use version control really well, they're going to do well in their own careers. When we teach them how to collaborate with other people, they'll do well in their own careers. They can take those skills to the workplace. Yeah.
Jesse very pointedly has nothing to say and doesn't want anyone new entering software.
Oh, sorry. I don't think I can say anything better than what you've said, both of you. I think we can definitely GitHub has a huge opportunity to teach people, and that's a lot of the focus of. I mean, Fabi can tell you our product design and the way that we're trying to, you know, rebuild and remake GitHub. I mean, we could keep GitHub the same as it is right now, and it would still do a great job for a lot of the developers that are already out there, or we could try to improve on it and make it better and bring more people in and do better teaching people who are new to code, who are approaching it for the first time. So I think there's a huge amount of impact that we can have there, and we are running towards that opportunity. So the next question is, to finish, what would you tell engineers, mechanical, chemical, any other type of engineer who want to make a switch into this industry? Where do they start? I say start with open source. Start with inspecting your browser and see what it looks like underneath. Play around with it. Try something out. Push a little code or fork somebody else's code and try to change it and see what it does, and see if you like that. If you enjoy the power and the creativity of it gives you, if you're able to get past the frustration and the fact that it crashes all the time, or things don't compile, or there are bugs, because that's definitely a part of a part of being a software engineer as well, is like dealing with that frustration and dealing with it well and learning to debug, to go and find the bugs and the problems and solve them.
Yeah, I mean, I got some bad news for you. My friends in mechanical and chemical engineering, you got drafted into software engineering like at some point while you slept. It already happened. You're already there, and so I guess, you know, let's see what we can do to make you comfortable here. Software, as Fabian said, is eating the world, and there's no escaping it in any discipline, but especially a discipline that relies on hard sciences, because software is a way of encoding rules into your work and making sense of your work. And so if you're in a position where you're building something mechanical, there's probably going to be some software component to drive it. And if that's true, hop online. Let's figure out where somebody has already written some code to solve the problem you have. There's a whole JavaScript framework for making robots work, which is weird, but it's true. It's actually pretty robust. It's got a whole community of people who are working to make it even better. So again, here's this place where 60% of the work that you would have need to do from scratch, somebody's already solved the problem for you. Make sure you're going and looking around and being lazy as possible by leveraging other people's stuff. And we could go through every discipline of engineering we can imagine. Data sets are online. Data sets are open sourced. Tools for making sense of the data have been open sourced. And more than that, as more and more data expands, you're going to need tools that are automated in order to succeed in keeping up with all of the stuff. So the revolution already came and went, and you weren't against the wall, so you're okay. But now it's time to find your comrades, because we're out here building the future, and it's working for you.
The thing I'll say for anybody thinking about doing this stuff, for anybody thinking about code and getting into startups and stuff, really stick with it. Like, there are a lot of frustrating things about tech. As Jesse said, like, stuff fails all the time. There are bugs all the time. Software is terrible. We are the infancy really of software development, and we have so much work to do to make this stuff a lot better. And if you just stick with it, like, the benefits are unbelievable. And beyond beyond money and beyond benefits and stuff, like, there's so many ways. Like, it's so easy today to build like a website, right? That can be seen by billions of people, right? There's still a ton of people who aren't on the internet, and they will be. They will be on the internet, and it'll be easier and easier and easier to get so many people to look at something. And so stick with it, and you can have a massive, massive impact.
Francesca relays her regrets that not be more vocally thankful for our time. So I will congratulate myself for my how awesome of me here with you.
Good job.
Yeah, great job all around. Pats on the back.
Don't break your arm now.
Thank you, Francesca, for having us.
Thank you. This was really fun.
Really great to be here. Thank you for the chance to help folks make some sense of this world. It is really weird, and we hope that we could be of some service in navigating that.
Cool.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.